drawn to comics and graphic novels. I'm really intrigued by them because they're really for the masses.
Someone just brought out this comic book. It was X-Men, Uncanny X-Men. Someone said, hey, look at this. And it hit me like, man, these are awesome drawings. The artist who was in that first comic book that inspired me to start doing comic books was Mark Silvestri. And I followed his work for a long time and watched his work evolve and mirrored my work after it. Another influence is Mike Mignola. He does the book Hellboy. And his work is very simplified, very black and white, and very graphic. And my work, I feel, has evolved from what Mark Silvestri was doing, which was a lot more traditional comic, which is a lot of little lines, making gradient shades, to this stark sort of black-white style of Mike Mignola.
Currently, I am working on learning how to do comics. I've started getting interested in doing web comics. So I'm working a lot on drawing and trying to get the web comics going so that I can start moving into a direction of graphic novels is what I really am trying to do.
I like to draw characters who look like they could be real, but then have elements of fantasy.
I really am drawn to it as an art form, not so much as trying to do superhero comics per se, but doing more of like an actual art that's in narrative form. Graphic novels, I think, are very interesting compared to just a comic, and it's very hazy. Everyone argues about what really makes a graphic novel, but to me, when I look at it, the difference is that it's more coming from a place of its art, versus I look at comics and I see something that's a little more mainstream, a little more puff entertainment, which isn't necessarily bad, but the graphic novels, to me, I'm really drawn to more of the really beautiful drawings and a chance to actually get to do something that's combining a story and art.
I often do tell stories and then put them out there, and I never know who's going to react to them. I tell my internal stories, and they find the niche, the little niche. I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 people out there who think like I do, and that's the voice I'm trying to bring, my own.
CLAW stands for the Cartoonist League of Absurd Washingtonians, and we picked that name just so that it would spell out CLAW. In order to become a member of CLAW, you have to be vetted by the other members and be voted in. You're vetted based on your work. If it's not up to snuff, you don't get in.
I grew up in a very small town. A town of 900 people and 1,200 cows. And comic books were one of the first things I realized came from outside of that town, and it was full of people who drew, which was great because that's what I did. So I figured that would be a great way for me to get out of town.
We wanted to be very civic oriented, we wanted to be very involved with the city, but we wanted to be involved in a very silly way.
And very recently, I've decided to do what I like to do, which is draw a very cartoony style.
I guess I enjoy it because it's a visual medium and I'm a visual person, so I get that out of it. I guess I have a more realistically based cartoon style because I used to do more representational type of art. So when I started, and whenever I cartoon, I still come at it from that more representational perspective. So, so I tend not to have the noodle arms. They tend to have elbows, and they tend to have proportions tend to be more exact and everything.
Impression of what a cartoonist is. We're like fairies and pixie dust. We're magical creatures to be coveted and cherished. I love that aspect. Too much of it has the starving artist sticked onto it, but I like the fact that when people think of us, they think really, oh, they're a fun group.
When I first came here from the East Coast 9 years ago, I was looking for an arts community or something where I could fit in. And there were so many opportunities for the arts in this city that I was really excited by it. And then I found some guys who are goofy and silly and like wearing fezzes, and I fit in with them pretty good.
I believe in being a professional cartoonist, and I've always had the attitude that you can make a living at this, you can have fun at this, and you can do them both at the same time.
My name is Yoshiko Yamamoto, and I'm the owner of the Arts and Crafts Press. We make letterpress and printed note cards and also limited edition prints using linoleum blocks. We actually have the studio in this wonderful old historic building. It was built in 1929 for Telecom Toy Company. So it's a historic building and it has a beautiful castle-like structure in front. And then it was taken over by Darigold. So now if you look around our building, you can see some old remnants of the old tiles that are beautiful. One of the biggest inspiration for me is this town of Tacoma. I love how it's situated close to Mount Rainier. I come from Japan, so we have Mount Fuji, and of course, Mount Fuji is very much like Mount Rainier. So, yeah, so being able to see that mountain here is a wonderful inspiration. We use both mechanized things as well as hand tools. So from hand tools, I like to use hand carving blocks and linoleum blocks and polymer blocks, all those things. And then for mechanized tools, I have old German presses from 1950s down all the way to 1890s printing presses. And we use all of them for different purposes. These presses are so beautiful, and they're not just beautiful, but they're in working condition, or actually perfect condition. We try really hard. It takes a lot of effort to keep these up. I think it's like a little printing museum in a sense, and I love them. So.
It's really actually a story of hometowns. The Haubs, Erevan and Helga, came to Tacoma as newlyweds. When they got to a certain age, as they were entering their 80s, they were reflective about what to do with a wonderful collection of Western American art. They came back to this notion of hometown. What is that special place in America for them? And it was Tacoma. Now, they'd been supporters of the museum before, so they knew us, and they'd been watching our growth and development, and they approached us. Would we be at all interested? And it did require some reflection. We had to really think about how it meshed with our Northwest art focus, and it goes hand in glove. We're really portraying American art in smaller segments, kind of Western portion, and of course our own Northwest corner of the world.
This collection at Tacoma Art Museum is the newest major museum collection of this type in the United States, and I'd say this is really in the top 10 of Western art museums in the country. There are several other collections at museums like the Buffalo Bill or the Aim and Carter in Fort Worth, Texas, and our collection ranks right up there with some of the work in these other more established collections. So we're really fortunate to have this up here. There's 295 artworks in the total Promise Gift, and we've got 130 on view right now at the Tacoma Art Museum. So there's a lot more to come. We're really excited.
What may be surprising to some visitors here to the museum is what the Haubs didn't collect. As Germans, they had suffered through many a war and conflict. They were not interested in purchasing works of the West depicting battle scenes. They were very respectful of Native American culture, and they didn't want to buy works of art that they would find in any way derogatory. One of the fabulous ancillary benefits of the Haub family collection gift was the opportunity to build new galleries. And we were very purposeful in thinking about what the most prominent site would be. And so the museum is even more anchored downtown with higher visibility along Pacific Avenue. And it's as if we've filled in a gap tooth in our relationship to our neighbor, the federal courthouse, the proximity to the University of Washington, and even our sister institutions.
When you're working with a building that exists, there's always the question of how do you relate to that building? Do you relate exactly as if that building was just now extruded along the street, or do you sort of investigate a different way of relating? And so by doing a darker building, a lower building, a more modest building to the existing building, we didn't want to take anything away from that building. We wanted to sort of support it, but where those two pieces come together, that's the void between the buildings, and that's where the entry happens between the buildings.
We were purposeful also in thinking about the outdoor spaces. We wanted to bring light into the galleries, and that also meant large glass windows with these fabulous movable screens as a unique feature. And that also meant that the life of the museum was now more visible on the street, and the activity of pedestrians and cars going by was also something that those of us in the museum could glimpse outside. By any measure, this is a transformative gift to the museum, the largest in our almost 80-year history, both in the collection itself being gifted to us, and then also so thoughtfully funds for new galleries and to endow the curator and other educational programs.
I'm Loe Shoshida. My medium is sumi, which is the Japanese word for ink. The traditional subject matter in sumi painting is nature-based. Some of my favorite subjects are like mountains, bamboo, landscape type subject matter. Traditional materials we use are referred to as the four treasures, so it gives you an idea how important they are. And they're sumi, the ink. We have to grind our ink fresh every time we paint, and so we need a grinding stone, which is called a suzuri. Then the third treasure would be the brush, and then the fourth treasure would be the paper. In sumi painting, we're trying to capture the essence of the subject in as few spontaneous strokes as possible. So when I'm working on paintings, I'm trying to express what I feel about the subject as opposed to trying to create some objective or realistic impression of the subject. To get that spirit to come out, can be more challenging sometimes than other times. So I will have like many, many versions laid out, and they'll be hanging to dry from all different places. It gets pretty busy around here. Well, it's a wonderful space, this studio in the Merlino Arts Center building. It's got a wonderful north wall full of windows. So it's just, I think, unique in that because there aren't any other spaces in this building that have that advantage. And then it provides another whole wall that I can use as a gallery. So I can hang my paintings, so I love that. And the light hits the paintings, so it works out really well. People will inevitably say, that is so much more difficult than it looks. And what I've learned over all these years is that the simpler something looks, the more difficult it is because it had to be condensed down to that level of simplicity.
Well, H.C. Weaver was an independent movie producer who had the great idea of making independent films in Tacoma, Washington during the 20s. Once the studio was built on this 5-acre parcel at Titlow Beach Road, 1600 Titlow Beach Road, as a matter of fact, there was also some adjoining bungalows built. The hotel that was across the street, which we call the Lodge now at Titlow Beach, was actually a hotel at that time. It was like capitalization. Okay, let's capitalize on this film studio being here. And they actually drew up a plan, and we have some drawings of that, of Hollywood by the Sea. And it was no doubt going to be envisioned as the Northwest Hollywood. And why wouldn't it be, right?
Silent film was a rage. There were many other cities in the United States that were also looking to start up a film production studios, and Tacoma was unique in that they had a successful one.
Talking to local historians and museums, they said that Tacoma had a film studio in the 1920s down by Titlow Beach that filmed 3 films, and they were all lost since the 1920s. And a lot of research had been done, but no one had ever been able to track them down. So I started researching under the director's name and found out that Eyes of the Totem still existed at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City.
We now think that probably 1 out of maybe 10 of the thousands of silent films that were made actually survive and are viewable today. So when something like this comes along, where it's discovered that a fragment or some bit and you can view it again, it really is something to celebrate. And then when the extraordinary thing happens and you have the opportunity to see an entire feature film, to see the entire work of the artist of their day, it really is amazing. It was a core of people in the community that are already one way or another involved either in history or involved in film as an art form. And so the Team Tacoma, the group that have kind of been working on this, is sort of a balance between historians, kind of academic historians, and then people from our film community and our film history community.
Films at the time were hand cranked, the cameras were hand cranked, and as a result, anytime a film was made, there would be a variation in speed, not only because of who was cranking it, but also how they were being directed and told what to do. So as a result, there's a lot of variation in silent film in terms of frame rate. And when we watched the film the first time, a number of us were a bit concerned about the frame rate that we saw it being displayed, which was at 24 frames per second. Since we're the ones showing the film, we're kind of like the projectionist of old. We have the opportunity to slow the projector down or speed it up because the film's in our hands and we're showing it, and the director's not here to tell us what speed. So we came to the conclusion that this film was probably best viewed at about 19 frames per second, which is, I think, what the cameraman probably cranked it at.
the main restoration, it should be noted, is more of a musical restoration. So it's more about finding a time code to set in place so a composer can write an original score for it.
Well, film music is a very interesting topic because of technology. Music was being performed live through the late 20s and a little bit into the early 30s. And that's the era that this movie is in. But even in that period, if you study film music from the late 19th century, the 1890s through the end of the 20s, even that was a period of immense growth in the way that scores were treated and performed. If there was an original score for this movie, it has not survived, to my knowledge, and that would be typical. My guess is that it was left to the discretion of each theater. And so what would happen in the silence back then is, say for what I'm calling Miriam's theme, Miriam is the female lead in the movie, the cue sheet might have said lament. And so then the performer or performers would just choose, hey Harry, let's do that number 27 lament. I really like that. And there you go, there's your answer. So there really is no score. The movie industry was evolving very rapidly, even through the 20s. Scores were starting to become more affixed to the movie than they were earlier. It was changing really rapidly. So it is possible that a theme might have been played by a 30-piece orchestra, say for a particular movie, on maybe a 30-piece orchestra, and then in a smaller city, the same theme would be performed as a piano reduction. That was starting to happen too. But the whole industry changed when talkies came in. I find myself, as I've gotten very familiar with it, and I need to be, is I've seen things, I know what W.S. Van Dyke is after here, and I'll look at maybe something that's in minute 12 of the movie, and I'll immediately think, wait a minute, I need to go back to minute 37, and I need to watch that again. I want to watch these both back to back. And I found myself pulling up double copies and watching back to back, boom, boom, boom. So it's that kind of becoming as intimate with the story as I could possibly pull off. I think we've really seen some artistic liberties being taken with silent films in the last, say, 10 years, just to pick something. It's not, to quote a friend of mine, they're not being treated like museum pieces. They're being treated as living art for us to enjoy today, but to be appropriate. Now that's subjective, but to be appropriate. So the how is very varied. It's understanding, having a good sense and respect of music history, but I also want to tell the story from the director's point of view for a modern audience. And I'm trying to achieve both those things.
Well, this movie is really a historic artifact because it shows some great historic areas in the city of Tacoma, such as Pacific Avenue, the Winthrop Hotel, Annie Wright, all along Pacific, and some of the Titlow Beach area.
It's a unique historical document that just gives us this amazing experience of sitting in a theater and watching our city that we recognize go before our eyes, moving with people and streetcars and everything 80 years before. There can't be more than a handful of people in Tacoma that ever saw that site during their lifetime that are still alive today, and there we are looking at it. So just amazing experience.
It's pretty exciting to know that the icon of the film is still here and available for our ogling and respect. It is an exciting window into the past, and done professionally. It's a quality film. It's a fun story, as far as melodramas go, and it's got an action-packed ending with romance.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
great for the whole family.
This started about it's almost 6 years ago now. We met each other through a class on making paper with natural materials. And then we started working together pretty much on a regular basis. And ever since then, when Belusha's not teaching, we're usually working together, making paper, learning to color paper, collecting things to make paper.
Right, and we also have done some collaborative art projects. What binds us together is our strong work ethic. So when we're really hard workers and we're really interested in doing experiments, we both love nature, but I think it's our work ethic and how we listen to each other and that makes it a good collaboration, and we kind of spur each other on. Sometimes a laborious process like making paper can be frustrating, and by having two of us, we can work through the challenges.
Yeah, the labor, it's very labor intensive, and we've developed ways of making things a little easier for us, but it really helps to split the work.
It's nice to have another person who kind of understands, like why we're artists, and we support each other through the frustrations of being sort of underappreciated by the society at large.
We're both introverts too.
Yeah.
So we don't talk a lot when we're working. We spend the time working, and then later we talk about it, what we're doing, and at lunch and like that. Part of what the paper making process is you kind of fall in love with the process. Yes, at the end you take it out of the dryer and you see all the pieces that you have, but you really have to kind of love the process or you won't be doing it for very long, because there's a lot to it. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me in the back? Yeah! All right, guys, I'm going to do my poem. It's called Life Around Here. When I lost faith, I lost self. Who am I? This week I inhaled a stranger who is this I, because I do what I got to do to get by, even if inside I have to deny the truth.
The idea for the Poetry Slam in Hilltop came about as part of the Preservation Month in May, and we were approached by City's Preservation Office to put on an event that highlighted some of the historical and, I guess, present aspects of the Hilltop neighborhood, using youth poetry as a kind of vehicle for that.
A big kid pushed between towers of muscle. Middle school was hell, high school even worse. No way to hide the weight, it became a curse. He didn't go.
So Poetry Slam generally is a poetry competition where you have 5 judges who rate poems between 0 and 10. We ask 5 people who generally don't need to know anything about poetry. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, it doesn't really matter. The idea is that whatever they find interesting about the poem is what they ascribe the score to.
This is the way I feel. No one can tell you the way I feel. So numb, but these stories are so real. In this life you spin your wheel. So real, so real.
Because it's representing Historic Preservation Month, for me, as I was working on this, I really was thinking about a lot of the community that's kind of being erased from the Hilltop right now. There's a big boom in our economy. We have a lot of new people moving in and some gentrification happening, and because of that, there are a lot of other community members that are leaving, a lot of businesses that are closing down while others open up.
I'd like to welcome the rest of the world to my block. A block where between the hours of sunrise and sunfall, we play dodgeball with gunshots. See, on this block, you can become a lost soul for standing in the wrong spot.
Part of it, for me, was also about hearing the stories that young people might say about the streets that they grew up on, the streets that they remember, and not just preserving what's here, but also preserving what was a part of the past and what's gone now.
With everything that my family's gone through, I don't know who to be happy for, me or them or everything or everyone, and it's hard to be happy for everyone when everything is changing.
I felt moved. I just felt really excited to see as many poets as we had standing up there, feeling confident, and once they got into it, it just kind of took over. Surprised also, you know, you never know what you're going to hear, and there is a lot of variation, a lot of depth. Overall, just completely moved and excited for the future.
But I was really, really impressed with the quality of the work, and I think I wasn't the only one. I think there were other people in that space who were really moved by at least one of the poems that they heard. And I know myself by many of them, and I was really stoked at the end. I thought the kids were really on point. Yeah, really solid poets.
I promise you that you will lose yourself before you ever lose the weight. And you will be weighed down by the beauty that you think you will gain. And I want to shake you, to make you see the error of your ways. But I'm afraid that if I do, I will break you.
What we like to say at the City of Destiny Poetry Slams, at Louder Than a Bomb, and generally in youth slams, is that the point is not the point is the poetry, because we don't want to overemphasize a competition, because we don't really think that poets competing against one another is that interesting. It's really kind of dumb, frankly, but like the idea of getting people into the room together is really the goal. So we emphasize over and over again that the competition doesn't matter. And yeah, there are prizes, but I don't think anyone really left that evening feeling bad that they lost. I think everybody left that night feeling really glad that they came, and I think that's important.
Live and learn, it's a lesson taught. Through the stress you caused me my buttons and you pressed them hard. Never thought I'd say it, but I'm better off to face it. My heart was just a game, you ripped my chest apart to play it. And if home is where the heart is, well then you used to be the roof over my head.
Just coming from a self-expression standpoint and working with young people, I know, and working with people who are experiencing homelessness also, I get to hear so many stories every day that don't really touch the light of day. And I recognize that there are so many assumptions about a lot of the young people that I've worked with and that I get to spend time with on a regular basis, and those assumptions are pretty off. And so I love the idea of just being able to see young people get up on the mic and share whatever their story it is, whether it's poetry or just journal entry. You know, I want them to be able to get up and feel proud of their story and share it so that other people can stop making assumptions about them and support them for who they are right now in this moment.
Rosalind Bell. I am a writer. I do all kinds of writing. In Tacoma, primarily I'm known as a playwright, but I write short stories. I'm at work. If you've known me for any amount of time, you know that I'm at work on a novel. We're on the gorgeous campus of the University of Puget Sound. What's special about this particular spot is this gorgeous sun we have today, and we walk 5 feet either way, and we are surrounded by the shade of lovely trees. I come to write, and I come with that intention always to write. Okay, that sounds like, oh, that's very easy. It's not at all. I sit down and I stare, you know, into the void, and I just make peace and hope that something's there to write that day that has something to do with something. It's quite open, beautiful, lush. There are nooks and crannies, which as a writer I love. It's a place that provides a certain degree of safety in the physical sense and also in the sense of a black woman in the world. This is a campus that for every 4 years is the Race and Pedagogy Conference. So they have invested in race and pedagogy as important for our country and our world.
This next poem is called A Stirring. It's a sonnet, actually. It's a sonnet about the end of the world. And I wrote it a few years ago, so we're a little bit closer to the end of the world now than we were when I wrote it.
Poetry was something that I always loved, and I kind of imagined, and I think I still do, that everyone loves it. We are linguistic beings, and language is one of the first things that we encounter to understand the world. Being able to play with language and have fun with language and try to understand things with words was always something important to me.
Once upon a time, in the land of Hilltopia, the people lived in harmony with urban grace.
I was a rapper, I like to put words together and entertain and impress people with my words. And went to college, and that's when my rap got a dose of academia.
I got my first book of poetry that I recall recognizing as poetry when I was about 8, and I just fell in love with it. It was a special language. It was a really special way of communicating love and beauty.
So this first poem is called Travel Planning.
I started writing poetry, I was probably in middle school, and I started out really as a songwriter and being influenced by the singer-songwriters of the mid-1960s.
You are the classic line, the genuine article, elegance and pizzazz, form and function. Girl, you look good.
I didn't really get invested in it until the early 2000s when I heard some spoken word artists that just had such an impact on me that I realized that that could be a really powerful form of communications.
And it was inspired by conversations that I've had with young people that I work with, people that I've organized with on the streets when we talk about oppression. It's such a big, abstract, overly used words, and often we don't know how to define it, and I found it really hard to define.
I began writing poetry when I was in middle school and just began developing that craft. I discovered hip-hop music, and so from there I was just growing really excited about wordplay and talking about social issues.
Life is so full of coincidence. Its coincidences coincide.
It is an art form that I think is sort of peculiarly positioned to allow us to reflect and to think about what brings meaning to our lives.
I do it as a form of self-expression and to share experiences that I've had. A lot of times people have experiences and they can articulate them. Sometimes I can't either, but in a poem, I can share my experiences with you, whether it was a good experience or a bad one. I can write it down and it's more digestible in the poem. If it's something tragic, I can use metaphor and kind of bury the feelings under the metaphor. And it's more deliverable and people accept it and they get it. And it's shared experience.
Tonight, maybe, you'll sleep in a better place.
Poetry is a craft demanding a really very short, succinct way of having to say something. Poetry, by its very nature, demands that you say things in a way that people can read into different meanings. It's an abstraction.
There is such a great freedom to speak what's on our mind and in our hearts. It's a place for us to celebrate what we believe in. It's a place for us also to rail against what we think might be unjust. It's a really special craft that I feel I can really be my true self in.
Johnny Damon was dead. 9 times, 9 games, his hair was moving, his feet were flying, but everyone in Boston would whisper, "Dead man swinging."
Poetry for me is actually an exploration, a journey. The act of writing is not something where I know what the answer is going to be or what I'm going to express before I do. I have a sense of it, but I actually take a journey while I'm writing. And then I think by the time I'm finished, when I'm successful, I've kind of discovered something as a result of the poetry that I'm excited to share with other listeners.
Hush on the streets, there's a hush in her heart. Drizzle hits the pavement, and each way she looks is dark.
So there are a lot of things that I want to explore as the Poet Laureate. One is exploring queer youth homelessness and sharing the stories of youth who have experienced that in Tacoma, and doing it in a platform of art, sharing the stories through a monologue that we'll compile later, and then bringing together a panel of different folks in the community, like community leaders, youth and young adults, service providers, where people can come together and bear witness to these stories and also talk about what are the strategies that we can come up with in our city to provide spaces and solutions for youth homelessness.
So from that day forward, and in the stone of the well it was set, the young man was now known as the Poet Laureate.
It has been amazing to watch the position continue to grow and to evolve over the years. Everybody who has come to the position has brought a different style, different work. They found ways to make that role their own and to really kind of nurture it, and it's been great to watch it grow.
The fact that we had all of the laureates from past generations or past years that were there, and there was such a sense of community and involvement and a weaving of both the literary community, the activist community, left, right, and center. That was very, very memorable for me as a culminating activity with the final presentation made by the new Poet Laureate, Kathy Wynn. And I felt like we were passing this program to a brand new strand of folks that I believe need to have forums to express through poetry.